The death of your child is the most stressful thing that any human being will ever have to experience. And quite often, as bereaved parents, we are judged on our behavior and how we're actually handling that grief. Welcome to the Grieving Mom's Guide to Life. My name is Susan Fahidi, and I am a grieving mom. I'm also a grief advocate and mindfulness life coach. As a bereaved parent, I've experienced many judgments on how I'm handling and coping with my grief, whether it's I'm grieving too long, or I should have done this, or I should have done that. It's one of those things where people are armchair quarterbacks. You know, they have an idea of what grieving is like. They have an idea of what grieving a child must be like, and therefore they place judgment on how we should be coping and how we should be behaving. I've had many conversations with bereaved parents and about these judgments, about how people respond to us, the things that people actually say to us, and they can be downright cruel. And if you have never experienced the loss of a child, you have no idea how hard it is. You have no idea what it's like to cope and manage through this. And if our behaviors are not always what you seem to think that they should be, well, that's too bad. It really is too bad. So today I want to talk about a mother that this happened to. And this woman happens to be in the spotlight. Her name is Jackie Siegel. She is the Queen of Versailles. She has a TV show. Her and her husband are quite well off, and they're building a mega mansion in Florida, and there is a TV show about her. The Siegels tragically lost their daughter, Victoria, and Jackie was harshly judged. There was video of her at the funeral. I believe that it's maybe after the funeral. They're transporting the casket. I'm not really sure what point of the funeral this is, and it doesn't matter. But there is video of her at the funeral, and I want to say that if anybody took video of me at either of my children's funerals, is the most vulnerable point of my entire life. Those 2 days when I had to bury my children were the most vulnerable. I was the most fragile, and I don't want anybody to see that. And I really regret showing this of Jackie in her most vulnerable moments, but it is such a prime example of what bereaved parents have to go through. And I want to maybe explain some of her behaviors from a grieving mother's standpoint. And I also, this video has been out for quite some time, so this would not be new if she were to have seen it. She's actually spoken about it publicly. So that's why I kind of feel like I can share it today. But I want to share it with you with a commentary and an explanation of why what the reporter has said about her is way off the mark and very inappropriate and completely uncalled for. And I just want to turn that around and talk about how it makes sense to me as a grieving mom. When I saw it, I thought, I don't get it. I don't get what their problem is with this. It makes complete sense to me. So here we go.
The grieving Queen of Versailles mom was on her phone holding an iced drink as pallbearers moved.
So let's talk about that for a second. The they criticized her for being on her phone and holding an iced drink. Well, first of all, they don't know that she's got an iced drink. Um, but she does have a drink in her hand. It looks like a fancy cup. And she does have her phone in her hand here. Now, let's talk about the drink for a moment. Um, so it looks like it might be a fancy cup, like a glitter cup. On the day of your child's funeral, you're looking for the smallest thing to bring you comfort, to bring you even the slightest bit of happiness, something that makes you feel good. And if having a drink in a glitter cup makes you feel happy on the day of your funeral, go ahead, have that blinged out cup. Um, Also, you're talking to a lot of people, you're crying a lot, you have a lot of pain in your throat, your emotions sit in here. And having a cold drink will often, or even a warm drink, having a drink will often relieve some of that tension that you're carrying in your throat. So there's really nothing wrong with her having an iced drink in her hand at all. Um, Somebody may have been able to come up and take that from her in certain times, but there was a time during my daughter's funeral, I begged somebody to bring me something cold to drink because it was so hard for me to be going through that without a drink. My sister actually rescued me with a nice cold drink. So I don't know what the big deal is about that. And then having their phone in her hand. So she has been reported, Jackie has been reported to say that she was recording this at the time. So this is her daughter Victoria's casket. Victoria is inside of there, and Jackie is recording that. And the reason that she's recording that she has said, is that's the last time she will ever see her daughter, and she needed to have a recording of that moment. Um, for for parents, for people who have not lost their child, um, that may not make any sense to you. In some cultures, people actually photograph funerals. They actually photograph the deceased. They actually take photographs of them, of family and themselves with the deceased, and it's perfectly acceptable. And as a bereaved mother now, it was not something that I was interested in. Actually, it's probably not even something that I thought of at the time. And I don't know how I would feel about it if there was recordings of that time, either video um, or photographs. I do know that there is a photograph of like the altar where my son was laid out. I have never seen it, and I don't think I ever want to see it. If I had them, I would probably put them away, knowing that I had them, but not ever come back to them. And maybe that's what Jackie has decided to do. We don't know, and it's none of our business. But if she decided to have a video recording of the last time she was ever going to be with her child, she's entitled to have that.
Versailles mom was on her phone holding an iced drink as pallbearers moved her daughter's casket.
And here she's actually on the telephone. I'm not sure moving forward if they're going to talk about her being on the phone, but I see that she is on the phone, and there's nothing wrong with that either, because she could be calling any number of people looking to find out where they are. Um, she could be looking for her husband. Like I said, they are a fairly well off family. Maybe they have a driver she was trying to get in contact with. People that called me during that time were often people to do with having something to do with the funeral. And I needed to be available for them, for that to happen. And we don't know what's happening in this this part of the video or a photograph. This looks actually like a photograph.
Tuesday, pictures
Yeah,
show
it's a photograph.
Jackie Siegel, a star of a 2012 documentary about her family's Florida mega mansion, was dressed in a tight black dress in.
She's dressed in a tight black dress. So I'm not even sure why that was worth commenting on by this reporter. I'll just say here, you know, Jackie is a very beautiful woman. She's got a lovely figure on her, and she's known for wearing tighter, shorter, a little more revealing clothes. And when my son died, Brandon died first. My daughter Bethany died second. But I remember very vividly on the day of his funeral, I went into my bedroom to get dressed. And I came out and I said to my youngest son, "How do I look?" And he said, "Mom, you look fine." And I didn't feel fine. So I went back into my bedroom and I changed my outfit again. And I came back out and I said, "Zachary, how do I feel?" I said, "Zachary, how do I look?" And he's like, "Mom, you look fine." And I started to cry. And I said to him, "What does it matter what I'm wearing? My child is dead." What does it matter what Jackie is wearing? Her daughter had died, and she probably just went into her closet and pulled out her black outfits. And maybe that was the most appropriate one that she had. Maybe somebody on her staff pulled clothes out for her to choose from. And she probably had that same thought. What does it matter what I wear? My child is dead. What does it matter? I think she looks beautiful.
Warning for her 18-year-old daughter, Victoria, who died Saturday of a suspected drug overdose. Victoria Siegel was found unresponsive by a housekeeper at home while her parents were in Utah for a wedding. Victoria, who had a history of prescription drug problems, received cruel and hateful text messages from her boyfriend's phone the morning of her death, her family said.
Yes, and Jackie received cruel and hateful messages from the media after her daughter died because they didn't approve on how she was grieving. I'm going to show something. Actually, I want to talk about something. I'm going to talk about something here for a moment. There was some, in this video, there was some really hurtful comments about Jackie and her family that I'm not going to read because I think they're disgusting. This woman had just lost her child, and the way that I see it, she didn't do anything abnormal. She didn't do anything that warranted any mean or hurtful comments. But some of the comments point back to a specific point in this video, which was showing the family and a young woman, and I don't know who this young woman is. I don't know how she's connected to the Siegel family, if she's one of their children. I honestly don't know who she is. but she has well, she's sticking out her tongue, and maybe she's doing it towards paparazzi, or maybe she's just being silly. So right about here, I'm going to insert a photograph of my daughter at her brother's funeral. This is my daughter. This is my daughter Bethany and her best friend Christine at the cemetery after we had buried my son. And they're sticking out their tongues. And somebody took a picture of it. And, you know, these days are so stressful. They are so emotionally charged. They are the hardest days of your life. And you have to have a release of some of that, or you're going to have a physical, mental, emotional breakdown. People do end up in the hospital because of days like this. And sometimes we just have to blow off steam, especially when we're young people and we haven't had experiences in coping with higher levels of these emotional stressful moments. And that's what my daughter and her friend were doing. Actually, there was a whole bunch of them there. They stayed after we all went back to my parents' home, which was close by, after burying my son. And but the young people stayed. They stayed for a while at the cemetery. And, you know, there was probably some alcohol there. They weren't that young, they were old enough. Um, but they were hanging out as a group of people. And that's what the wake is for afterwards. That's why we do wakes, is, you know, we do get together to celebrate the life of that person, but it's also so that we can release some of that stress, blow some steam. And people laugh at wakes. People laugh and celebrate, and they actually, even though we're getting together because a loss of life, people actually have a good time at wakes. And um, and maybe that's what this young person did during this time. Maybe, I don't know. We don't know the context of when these photographs were taken through the course of the day, what the timeline was. But maybe this was after Victoria had been buried and this young person was blowing off steam. Maybe she was being, you know, a little snarky towards the press that were filming and photographing this family. Um, but there was nothing really inappropriate about it. The only thing that's inappropriate about it is that it was captured on film, and then it was released to the media for people to judge. Like I said at the beginning of this video, that if people were to judge me and my family on the day that we buried my two children, I'm sure I would be harshly criticized. As a matter of fact, there were times that I was harshly criticized. It just didn't happen to be in the public eye like what happened to Jackie. And I really think that all of us who have harshly judged Jackie in the way that she handled the aftermath of the death of her child, um, she's owed an apology. And I implore you, if you know somebody who is going through the grief of losing a child, or when they go through the grief of losing a child, do not judge them. Do not judge them, because you have no idea how hard it is. And sometimes the simplest of pleasures, like a glitter cup, like the emotional release of sticking out your tongue and being childish and silly about something, helps you get to the next moment, because that's all you're doing as a bereaved mother. That's all you're doing, especially in the very, very early moments of the death of your child. We're just trying to get from one moment to the next. And honestly, I'm a little jealous of Jackie for having that glitter cup at her daughter's funeral, because if she were a smart woman, there was probably something of the alcoholic kind in that cup. And I wished that I would have had that and thought about that to get me through my two children's funerals, because that's what it is. It's her child's funeral, the second hardest day of her life, following the hardest, which was the day that her daughter actually died. So, on that note, if you were a bereaved parent, please be kind to yourself, because you deserve it. You deserve all the kindness that you can receive, including from yourself. If you are not a bereaved parent, I implore you to not judge bereaved parents in how they behave, in how they behave in the early days and in how they behave in the following days, because it never goes away, ever. We have to live with this for the rest of our lives, and we cope the best way we can. And sometimes that's just getting from this moment into the next one. So that's it for this video. Please consider giving this video a like and subscribe if you haven't. And also share my videos with other bereaved parents that you may know, because I'd really like to welcome them into the community. I'd like them to join the conversation. And bereaved parents, drop comments below. Tell us about how you've been harshly judged. Let the world know how wrong this really and truly is. Anyway, I love you guys.